cognitive decline, way before anybody said it. It was being dismissed as a far-right conspiracy theory.
He's as sharp as a tack.
Yeah.
Meetings behind closed doors. Let me tell you, I know the real Joe Biden. Somebody said to me on Twitter today, he's about as sharp as blue tack. That's really what they meant to say. But you're right, it's terrifying the extent to which this thing exists. And you do sound like a tin-hatted twit, a tinfoil hat. The governmental media academia complex, like the old, warfare, the military-industrial complex, it's a thing that exists, and it closes ranks, it circles the wagons.
Yeah, absolutely. And it almost feels like, a communist party would operate, having that level of false information built up around somebody.
What the party tells you. Of course, there's no suggestion that this was known about at the time, is there? We don't know that.
Prostate cancer.
Well, certainly not in an aggressive
There was
state.
there was a story, because a few people have shared that, I wouldn't have remembered it otherwise. A polyp was removed in 2021, which was said to be benign, and may very well have been benign. I don't think you can necessarily regard the diagnosis as part of the cover-up.
Yeah.
I think, if anything, they're trying to use possibly the release of the diagnosis now in order to put up squid ink to muddy the waters. And I've had a few people already say to me, oh, come on, show a bit of respect, the old man's struggling now. I'm like, no, this is the political scandal of the century.
Yeah.
The fact that an old man is now dying, like less than a year into the term that you were only last year trying to get him to take on another 4 years of.
Yeah.
Well, and people keep saying he might have been the president. Kamala Harris might have been the president. That's the other problem.
Yeah. She doesn't need dementia to be on stage. I think I'd rather have Joe Biden with dementia, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a huge cover-up. And, as Simon says, a lot of people die with prostate cancer, and they can test it with... Because I'd imagine they caught it quite early, because they test it with, I think, just a blood sample now, instead of, the old finger, which is why I've stopped going to get tested. I used to put myself in every Tuesday, you know what I mean?
I had a biopsy a few years ago where they take a little clip.
With a needle?
No, with a little... It sounds like nail clippers. They put it in there, and you don't feel anything because you've had a spike up there giving you an anaesthetic. Yes.
It sounds like there's a lot of things to feel.
You feel the anaesthetic, obviously, just like you do when you have your gum, a needle in your gum.
They usually do it in my mouth first.
Yeah. The other gum. And, and then they warn you not to be shocked at anything that emerges will be bloody for a while.
Right.
It's quite horrific.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's the one thing I remember.
Yeah.
But, this is...
Getting those magazines off the shelf.
Yeah, this is not exactly that. Oh, God. This is not exactly, newsworthy, but I have a view, if anyone out there in TV land is able to get to grips with this challenge, we should be able to have our prostate safely removed.
Right.
At a given age, they're not even necessary for you to have functional sex.
Yeah.
Their purpose is entirely to do with fertility.
Right.
You get to a point at which you don't want them anymore, and all they do is keep you up at night, going to the loo every couple of hours, and eventually get cancerous.
So yeah, and can they be removed? Is it
It's
something?
quite
This does sound a bit like the Lewis Schaefer School of Medical.
I had a friend who had it removed, and oddly, the scar is at the front. You would think it would just go in the back, but apparently it went in through the front.
But apparently it wraps around the urethra, and that's why it causes so many problems. So when it, gets enlarged, mine's about the size of a grapefruit right now, so it squeezes the urethra, the old urethra franklin.
Clinging thing that you can't get shot of.
Yeah. Who designed that? What's our malign god designed this swelling organ that clamps around your urethra? Terrific.
About 5 a.m.
You see what men have to deal with, Chris.
It sounds like a nightmare. We don't know we're born to be asleep.
Anyway, the other story on the Daily Mail we may as well mention is the PM risks Brexit vote betrayal. This is, of course, ongoing negotiations between Keir and the EU, which it gets picked up on a couple of other front pages. Will probably in more detail about possibility of expanding the freedom of movement, and also Europe's trying to worm its way back into our fishing.
They're trying to get back into our fish, and they're going to make our bananas bendy again, or straight again. I can't remember which was bad. Let's talk about Gary Lineker now. Cressida, are you a big fan?
Oh, huge. This is, well, it's not on The Guardian, but there is a story on The Guardian about Chelsea Seal treble with silverware at Wembley. Good for them. And somebody called Sandy Baltimore, who I assume is a football player scored twice to ensure a 3-0, that's not how you say it, is it 3-0 win?
An American sports commentator.
Anyway, somebody's won some football. I would like to talk about Gary Lineker, who's quit the BBC. He's gone. His rat tweet was the end of him.
Yeah, so he tweeted a sort of, I guess, a pro-Gaza or anti-Israel tweet that had a picture of a rat. I think we've got a picture of the tweet. Here it is. Zionism explained in less than 2 minutes. I mean, to be honest, if you're explaining something as complex as the Middle East conflict in less than 2 minutes, there may be a chance you're taking a simplistic view of the entire debacle, Gary. I mean, there's your first clue. There he is, admiring his own tweet. And oblivious to the rat that's in it. So, I mean, the rat obviously harks back to Nazi propaganda.
Yeah, I would assume so. I haven't actually seen the 2-minute explainer. I could probably be educated by it. Now, maybe I'm so arrogant to think I'm above it. Do I know, can I fill 2 minutes myself? No, I mean, I assume so. Although, I suppose it is always possible. It was just like Roland Rat or someone who's been out of work for a few years and found some voiceover, available for... it's conceivable. You've got to be so careful with that stuff, though, haven't you? I think this is the thing that I find saddening about Gary Lineker, because I'm not a massive football fan, and I haven't watched Match of the Day with any sort of regularity, but I do think he's pretty good at his job. He was the single best paid presenter on BBC TV, and the 2 out of 3 of those have disgraced themselves, of course, in recent years, But he was the single best paid. He had it all cushy, he had it all lined up. He could go and present the World Cup and all the rest of it. And I understand that he's got strong views about world politics. A lot of us do have, but just all he had to do was just be a little... I don't know, and I don't honestly think... I do not see that he has advanced the cause of Gaza freedom or Palestinian liberation or whatever he would want to call it, or even working towards a ceasefire. All he's done is make huge swathes of people feel really quite angry with him for misusing his profile.
Yeah, I'm as surprised as you're that a football commentator didn't solve the Middle East conflict with some tweets. But
if it wasn't going to be Paul Gascoigne, it wasn't going to be anyone. I'm sorry.
Paul Gascoigne down in the Middle East with a bucket of fried chicken and a fishing rod. That would sort Hamas out.
Just across the wire. What is that? That's not. It's him.
How are you, lads? Sad though, isn't it? He's the one that cries, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a bit odd now. Yeah.
Well, apparently
he won't be taken over from Gary.
He has undiagnosed Tourette's possibly, which obviously now we overdiagnose things. But back in the 90s, we didn't. And I think Gary Lineker does have a sort of carefully cultivated public image of being a nicey lefty.
He was very empathetic. Funny enough, you mentioned I mentioned Paul Gascoigne, but in the 1990 Italian World Cup, when Gascoigne got his yellow card, that meant he wasn't going to be in the final if they'd won it, and he was in tears on the pitch. It was Gary Lineker who famously mouthed to Bobby Robson. He genuinely is quite sort of emotionally intelligent, which is why no doubt pictures of bleeding children in Gaza have moved him. I don't doubt that it's a genuinely emotional engagement.
Although not the Israeli ones. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the BBC does seem to have a problem with anti-Semitism. We've got a reply from Gary Lineker. So in a statement, Gary Lineker said, "On Instagram, I reposted material which I've since learned contained offensive references. I very much regret these references. I take full responsibility for this mistake. That image does not reflect my views. It was an error on my part for which I apologise unreservedly." And a source told The Sun it is a heartbreaking end to an extraordinary broadcasting career. I don't think it's the end of his broadcasting career, though. I think he might be leaving BBC. And he's got, he basically runs this podcast platform.
Oh, hanger, The rest is history, the rest is politics, and the rest is silence for Gary Lineker.
And there's also
a Hamlet quote there for you.
There's job offers coming in from ISIS and Iranian state television.
Or maybe CNN.
well, let's not be too extreme.
It's a good question. I wonder whether he would, because he has got business interests in that, and it apparently is worth a lot of money. Although I still don't understand how podcasts make money because they just have mattress adverts.
Yeah.
But somehow he's made a lot of money, and I don't think he's actually doing one himself yet, is he? So maybe that's where he's going to go. I mean, maybe he's thinking that will be it. You know, the rest is gold.
Yeah. And this would be as as big. If you go out in a blaze of glory, then you get all the headlines, and then people follow your podcast. And another.
I see what you're doing there. Yeah.
There's another BBC star, Hugh Edwards.
Oh, I thought we were talking about Kevin Spacey then. Okay, no, okay. Where's this one?
So Hugh Edwards, he was, I assume he was one of the other BBC top highest paid stars.
Yeah, we're off the front pages now.
Off the front pages, story 5. So Hugh Edwards was being paid £500,000 a year, almost. It was over 400,000.
Yeah.
And apparently the BBC were warned about his behaviour back in 2012 and filed it under, we'll just deal with this whenever. See if it gets any worse or whatever, and then obviously it all blew up. But it's kind of shocking that this had been they were warned so long ago, and then I should imagine his victims then would be legal after 10 years.
It's a shame they didn't deal with it at the time, not just because of victims, but also because later on they actually had a spreadsheet of people in the BBC that we complained about, and they were so overwhelmed. It was actually difficult at that point to give it any specific attention.
Yeah. £475,000 per annum. Yeah, wow. That was his salary after the race. He
was on 20 grand more than me.
Yeah, I know, unbelievable. And he has been utterly disgraced and destroyed. It's much more about the BBC's reputation at this point, but he still hasn't paid back all the money that he continued to earn after he was unable to present because the scandal was going on, which I just think is completely.
Has he paid any of it back?
I don't believe he has, no. I think there's been some sort of approaches to negotiate it. He's trying to flog his house if anyone's interested. His £4.75 million house in Dulwich has dropped down to 4.5 million. I don't know whether you get the home cinema included with all the hard drives.
Why are all these floorboards ripped up?
Must be nasty for anyone who lives in the £4.75 million house next door. Oh God!
This is the thing. The way Hugh Edwards was treated. So he said he'd lost the phone. He was only, I believe, prosecuted for what they found on somebody else's phone who'd been sending him images. So they could only prosecute him for that stuff because he said he'd lost the phone that he received the images on. Rather like Rebecca Barbie. Who lost her phone in the
That's extraordinary, isn't it? We've all got our photos on Google Cloud here, and I just find that extraordinary. You didn't have
mine crop up. I mean, I still have one through puberty, and it's weird. It's like a little boy appears on my phone, and it's not in any compromising, but it's just like, do you remember this lovely day 7 years ago? And I'm like, God, that's weird. I mean, if you just like get your phone out and anything could.
Imagine Hugh Edwards.
Anyone would use it.
Showing somebody directions all of a sudden.
Ignore that was from years ago.
But he wasn't remanded to custody. He was allowed to go home, and who knows? Who knows what if somebody in that situation could have further evidence that the police didn't find, and it allows them to dispose of it. I thought it was disgusting, how he was treated so leniently when people who sent a few naughty tweets during the riots were treated as if they were paedophiles.
Yes, you're right. And what's so shocking is that we now know that Davey knew, and he came out and said, we were shocked. No one knew about the specifics of what we heard over the last few
years. Hearing this for the first time.
Yes, he had to do some acting. And the truth was, he knew. I mean, there's nothing that could be more damaging to the BBC, really.
Was his acting good enough to get on EastEnders?
The thing is, he's one. I mean, as I say, he was genuinely one of the top 3 paid presenters, along with Lineker. The other one is Zoe Ball, incidentally, who is absolutely beyond reproach. I want to emphasise they're not remotely in any crosshairs as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. But they obviously allow these people to become too big. They're untouchable. They're too big to fail. And it's exactly what happened with Savile.
Right.
So they haven't learned their lesson, it would seem, and I'm not sure they're going to get a third chance.
Yeah, I don't think so. Well, coming up, we're going to look at the front page of the Daily Telegraph. What's it got? It's got the Labour revolt over Brexit betrayal, and the Princess inspires move for 6 months paternity leave. I could have done with that a few years ago, and more stories from inside the papers as well. This is Headliners, only on GB News. We've got to do with everything in that. think.